Thank you.
Okay, all right. I want to start. I want to get, it's 8:05. It's time to get rolling. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. This is a little bit of a different experience here tonight. We're all on Zoom instead of being in person in the room. I chose to do it this way because the 2 classes ago when we had Beryl Solomon, it was actually very hard for him, you know, when we're all sitting around the table and he's just looking at the screen. It was hard to communicate. And so this should be much better. Each of us has our own direct communication here with Mordechai. So Zoom, CHYE mini MBA on Zoom tonight. Okay, so here's my introduction. This is actually closing a circle of 9 years ago.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it was that long ago.
That's right. So 9 years ago when CHYE just started, we were going to do an event in the end of the winter. It was February time, maybe? Or maybe it was the beginning. It was November. It was the beginning of the year, right?
I think
I'm forgetting
so.
what it was. But anyway, it was a big event. We rented the JCM and there was a lot going on. And Mordechai was introduced to me as an amazing business speaker, and he was going to come in from Houston, and he was going to be one of our star speakers at the event. And there was a storm. I'm forgetting if it was a snowstorm or if it was a hurricane. Something happened, and it didn't happen. Mordechai didn't make it in, and we had to delay the event, and I had to find someone else to fill his shoes. So finally, I said we're going to have that opportunity to have you speak, and here it is. 9 years later, I finally have you giving a class. So Mordechai is really a world-class business expert. He was in Crown Heights once, and he stopped off at CHYE, and he did some mentoring session with a bunch of people, and it was just fantastic to watch him work. He's very knowledgeable. Large companies hire him to consult with them and help them with their leadership. You know, when you're running a company, at the end of the day, we're talking a lot about the business. But this is the interesting thing you should just know, right? You could have a business and a product and sell it, but when you start hiring a bunch of people, the human dynamics get involved. And if you don't have the human dynamics right, it could mess. You could have the best product and you could have the best, concept, but the people element messes up. Okay. And you have to have a leadership. You have to have people at the top that have a vision and they're able to share it with other people. And that's actually the facilitator. The answer to all the human issues is having a business that has a structure and has leadership that allows people to be a part of the vision and allows people to feel like they're valued and allows people to buy into what the business stands for. And that's how you allow the business to flourish. So that's it's one of the parts of a business that's critical, but you don't always think about it because you think, oh, it's the business, it's the products that are selling. You want to have the price, you want to have the things that people want, you want to have this, you want to have that. But that's half the story. The people side is the other half of the story. And Mordechai is an expert in consulting businesses and how to get that people side right and how to have leadership and how he works with individuals to strengthen their leadership so that they are able to run their companies effectively. And so tonight in our mini MBA on a very high level, we're going to have a very high level discussion together with Mordechai on how to learn some leadership principles that hopefully you'll all make use of in Mitzvah Shem now and throughout your life. And of course, I also wanted to mention that aside from being the consultant, Mordechai is also a professor and he teaches leadership in colleges. And so, you'll see, as you see tonight, Mordechai is very polished. He's very professional. He's very engaging. You're going to enjoy very much tonight's class. And it's meant to be, I chose to do this as a Zoom meeting. I have something else called Zoom webinar. This is supposed to be interactive. Mordechai is going to call for you to speak. You have that unmute button. You all know how to use Zoom. Please stay engaged. Mordechai will ask you to ask questions and be involved. So this is not a lecture tonight. And so without further ado, I pass the microphone on to Mordechai. And thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking
pleasure. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
Yes. There's an hour's time difference. Houston right now it's 7, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, right. So everyone should just realize Mordechai's in a different time zone, but that shouldn't really make a difference. Okay, the floor is yours, Mordechai.
Okay, one quick question. Can everybody mute and unmute? Do you have that access?
Yeah.
You can. Okay, just wanted to be.
Everyone has it.
Thank you. Just wanted to be sure. And Rabbi Werde, you let me know earlier that I should go no more than 4 hours. And if I go more than 4 hours, I'll probably be alone here on Zoom by that point. So it's great to see everybody. Thanks so much. And I hope you're comfortable, but not too comfortable. If you're way too comfortable, it could be a problem about 30 minutes in. I sometimes have to get up and move around because I have a really hard time staying in one place for more than 5 minutes. Also, I do this a lot. There are some days when I do 4 or 5 webinars, a speech, maybe a 30-minute speech or a 1-hour speech, and I'm coaching anywhere from 6 to 10 different people every day. That's a typical day for me. This is my life. I love what I do. I have the wonderful opportunity to get to know a lot of business operators, business owners, people further down the food chain. And it is just a wonderful way to spend one's late career. And I'll be sharing some pieces of my history as we get into our discussion tonight, just to provide a little more color commentary. I do want to start off with a reflection. This is actually a real case, a reflection of an individual. We'll call her Lisa. Lisa has what is now a pretty high-performing company. She has 8 others who work with her. Things are arriving as planned. They're on the shelves. They're packing them up. They're shipping them out. She is so excited about her business right now. At least she was. There's only one issue. There are 2 people of the 8 that are trying to sink her boat. And you might wonder, why would that be? And what does sinking one's boat really have to do with entrepreneurship? What's interesting about Lisa is she's really bright, has a great business concept. It's a web-based business, and a lot of fulfillment. And they are nailing the fulfillment. The fact is, there are still 2 people out of 8 that are sinking her boat. And it makes you wonder, what is it about business operations that limits the owner's ability to see what's happening? What's the barrier? Why do we not make all of that stuff totally transparent so that we can make great decisions? Well, the fact is that leaders often are unable to make good decisions because they just don't have total transparency. Some of you, I imagine, are already in business. You're in management roles, you're in individual contributor roles. Some of you are in management roles and wish you were back in individual contributor roles, because management isn't always what others think it will be. And that's part of our discussion today. It has to do with my perspective about business. How much of the trouble situations that business owners and operators and entrepreneurs experience could be prevented? What do we do to ensure that more entrepreneurs who choose the entrepreneurial path actually do very well? You probably know the statistic. It's a painfully low stat. What is it? Somewhere around 20 or 25% of entrepreneurs that get into the business are still in the business 1 or 2 years later. And they might have pivoted into another business, but there's a lot of shifting going on. And that's part of what we'll chat about tonight. What is it that enables particularly early career entrepreneurs to thrive while others cannot? They have the passion, they have the instinct, they have that gut feel, but they just can't make things happen. A good friend of mine, actually a client who I've been working with for about 3 years, made another silly comment to me just the other day. He said, I would be so comfortable in my business. Things would be so much smoother if people weren't involved. And he kind of caught himself, and he acknowledged that they are a very important part of my business, but that's where all my issues are. We nail it operationally, but where we really struggle as an organization is on the people side. So we're going to spend some time this evening wrestling with what an entrepreneur leader faces every moment in business, and why it is that this role can be so challenging. But there's a catch. This is not a lecture. Rabbi Werdy alluded to that. And as you could tell in my WhatsApp message to you last night, I hope you came prepared. I hope you came prepared to think about people with whom you've worked that are leaders. Some were off the charts great. Some you wish you could have a coaching session with them today because you know far more now than you did back then. And some of you might actually be reflecting about your own situations. And I want to encourage you to bring those perspectives to the discussion this evening. I'd like to put us on, just 1 second. I just see we have a couple of people waiting to come in. I'd like to share some slides for the rest of the evening. And these, I'm tempted not to show slides, but I'm going to put the slides up just so if you want to, you can take a picture of it. You can use the slides to help trigger some thinking. Just know that as we get deeper into the conversation, the slides are just up there so you remember what the questions are. And many of the slides are incredibly reflective. There'll be a lot of storytelling, your stories, my stories. And we're going to talk about some things that you probably did not anticipate we'd be talking about tonight. Let me share slides. Give me just a moment to share screen. And at that point, you know that I won't be able to see all of your smiling faces. And let me know if you can see that. You can do a hand raise. All of you know how to do the hand raises, or just a quick thumbs up or a smiley face. Do you know the emoticons? Just use them if you can. Also, I like hand raises and thumbs up and smiling faces along the way. It just tells me that we are connected to each other. Give me just a moment to shift into slideshow mode. That should toggle over. There we are. All right. Quick introduction on myself. I don't like to spend too much time talking about me. Just want to share a couple of early career experiences and then some recent career experiences. I did some really nice tours, small companies like Pepsi, Texaco, Marriott Global Operations, Deloitte, Oracle. I still coach a lot of individuals in those different organizations. So what I bring to you this evening is not only perspectives from a lot of very challenging corporate environments, but also coaching that takes me into the day in the life of the entrepreneur. You are just as likely to see me coaching the owner of an entrepreneurial enterprise as you are a CFO in a Fortune 500 company. My core practice areas take me into organization development, career transition. Right now, I have in my portfolio of just career transition people, about 150 individuals in this region who are transitioning out of their jobs into new jobs, and they have no idea how they're going to get there. I do workshops, I do individual coaching. If I do rapid fire coaching, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I'm engaging them around their career transition to get them really amped about that next landing. So let's go a little deeper. By the way, if we've got an icebreaker coming up here in just a few minutes. So if you're already beginning to get restless, not to worry. This will pick up here in just a moment. A couple of ideas to keep us very connected and involved. Please chat away. I want you to see what's on one another's minds. Stay connected to each other. If you want to do a personal chat, that's fine. If you want to do a group message, that's fine with me. Cameras on when you feel the urge. They don't have to be on the whole time. But when you are sharing your perspectives, please turn your cameras on so we can see your faces. It's always nicer to communicate in a 360 way. We want to see who you are, where you are, and hear what's on your mind. Let's be, speaking of mind, be very open-minded about what you're going to hear tonight. And this is a discussion and not a lecture. Is there anything else anybody would like to add to this list? Based on previous experiences, this is number 5 in the lineup. I know you've had a session on general business strategy, sales, a startup pitch, sales methods, and management basics. So this is going to be a very different experience. And I just want to be sure that we're able to weave some of those other experiences into tonight's discussion. So a quick reflection on someone who has written a lot about entrepreneurial leadership. Her name is Jane Westman. By the way, we are not addressing all of these, but I do have a couple of questions for you. How important does it seem to be when you think of having a vision, clearly articulating that, even if you're in an organization reporting to others, or if you happen to be starting your own business now, if you've been at it for a while, how important is having a vision, being able to articulate it as a way to inspire others? Any ideas about that? Anybody, don't be bashful. Just come off mute and start chatting. Oh, by the way, I don't mind crickets. I'm pretty good with crickets for about 20 seconds, and then I'll start calling on people. So who's got a perspective about why vision is so important as an entrepreneur?
It helps you get through the ups and downs when things are tough. Then remembering why you started it all will help you get through the rough times and direction.
Mordecai, very helpful. So and are you saying this to yourself, or are you saying this to others?
Well, I'm sharing it, I guess, to others.
Yeah, so you're sharing it. And what's interesting about vision as an entrepreneur leader, and I'm just going to use the word leader from this point forward, is that if you have your own vision, you're way ahead of most. Articulating that vision to others, it gets you 50% farther. When you realize that how you're sharing that vision, how you're articulating it is really a source of inspiration for everyone around you, that's when you get a surge in productivity. And we'll be talking a lot about that this evening. What else on this list kind of gets you going, gets you thinking? All voices are welcome, just jump in. What else on this list gets you thinking? Anybody? Hopefully you can still see the slide.
I think as a leader, as someone who leads, when any one of these are lacking or you're slacking in any one of those, it's noticeable.
Yeah, so you're suggesting, Noah, that others notice it perhaps even before you do as a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really something how that plays out all the time. So if you're wondering how important it is to grow the team, when they feel you're doing that, when you show them you care, you get another surge in productivity. Well, what's interesting? Oh, by the way, before we press on, any other comments about this list?
Yeah, I'll share one. Listen carefully is making me think. I feel like, being a leader, basically things can get very time consuming trying to manage things. We don't always have time to pause and learn more and figure out how to fix systems. So that's what's getting me thinking.
And this is Barry, right?
Yep.
I just, please let me know if I mispronounce a name. So Barry,
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, you're reinforcing the fact that, I might be going out on a limb here, that a lot of people were not put on this planet to be good listeners. And when you listen to others, they really not only appreciate it, but it shows you care to listen. And one of the themes for tonight's discussion is how we go about listening. What do we listen for? What do we pay attention to? And how inspiring is it, along with having that vision, articulating that vision, that you care to listen to people? And there was an interesting quote from I think she was president of Girl Scouts of America for 10 years. And I can't remember her name in the moment, but her famous phrase was, listen for understanding before you speak to be understood. Listen for understanding before you speak to be understood. Because for most, we turn that. We can't wait to tell somebody else what's on our mind and to be understood. It's actually an incredible disruptor in business. So thanks, Barry, for reminding us about that. And just know that we're not spending a lot of time going down this list tonight. Although her research is very compelling, we're focusing on some other things that will get us a lot further, and I believe will be a lot more valuable for you. So here's the trip we're on. We'll talk a bit about leadership factors that really make a difference, not everything, because I've boiled it down for you. I've taken the equivalent of about 15 weeks of an academic experience in a university MBA program, along with my ongoing work, and tried to boil it down to the essence, the things that really matter to leaders. The next item is just zeroing in on leader practices that we know statistically, we have this data, produces a 35% boost in individual and team productivity. And then the last item, I'm just going to skip down to the bottom, the ability to reflect personally, assess your own readiness, because if you believe you're ready, but the rest of the world does not, you might stumble a little bit. So let's check in and make sure we're ready. By the way, I just admitted someone else. And if you let others help you with that readiness, you're much more likely to be more successful. And we'll talk quite candidly about true leadership versus managing day-to-day. How do we differentiate the two? This discussion tonight is not about day-to-day operations. This discussion is about how you take stock in your own readiness to be that leader, to continue being that leader you already are, and what are some of the tips and tricks to get there, and some of the hazards along the way. So that's a very direct intro. And what I'd like to do is get us a little bit further now, and first check for questions before we jump into our next discussion, because we've got our first work piece coming up. Any questions so far? Do we need to add any objectives? You think this will keep us busy? I hope so. Okay, let's get into our icebreaker. This is total involvement. All voices are welcome. If you want to use chat, please use chat. If you want to come off mute and share your perspectives, that's great. Remember, I asked you to do a little bit of homework. Consider a leader with whom you've worked. We talk about people with whom, actual people with whom we've worked. And the first question is, we'll take these one at a time, and you can come off chat, come off mute, or you can drop your ideas into chat. 2 or 3 behaviors that leader demonstrates that you experienced as very enabling. What does that leader do that's memorable for only good reasons? So you can either put your ideas in chat, but let's hear some voices as well. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, let's
you had
go.
A whole
Everyone,
night to think about this.
Unmute yourself and speak. Who wants to go
Yeah.
first?
Who's up first? Is this Mendel?
Yeah.
Go
so
for it,
somebody
Mendel, you're
who
up.
thanks, somebody who constantly shows appreciation for people's work, and they make the person feel good to what they do. Also using a first name basis, so showing people how they're worth it to their company makes people work even better.
Yeah, very nice. And so I gather you've had that experience, and it was very relevant. Or are you imagining? You really
No,
had you worked with someone who was that type of leader. Yeah, very nice, very nice. And is that asking a lot, or do you think that should be the norm?
It's hard. It's hard for a person to keep doing it, especially when he's running a whole company. But it makes a big difference. It really does.
And Mendel, you just highlighted one of the biggest hurdles for leaders, that especially in an entrepreneurial setting, very busy, laser focused. So difficult to protect time to do the things you just described. But my gosh, it's memorable, and you still remember, right? It's indelible.
Yeah.
Who'd like to build off of Mendel's positive behaviors? Who'd like to follow up on that? Mendel, you want to pick somebody?
I'm going to pick somebody. Let's go. I'm going to call on.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this Rabbi Wordy?
Yeah, this is Rabbi Wordy, and I'm nominating.
I didn't remember giving you permission to pick on people.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. But no, they're warming up. No worries. They're all connected here. But let's build off of what Mendel just suggested.
There's no actual Google, but I can't type up.
Rabbi Wordy, don't forget to put yourself back on mute.
Yes. Sorry, I'm going back on mute.
Actually, that's what some managers experience in the workplace. That kind of noise.
I'll share that I think is very positive, is allowing an employee to like use their new ideas, like not be micromanaging. Allow them to use the skills and talents they have, and let them bring that to the table instead of telling them to, constantly micromanaging them and telling them to do it the specific way that they see.
Yeah, and this was Barry again?
Yeah.
Yeah, Barry, you're also implying that there's a certain level of trust there. Trust that your folks can do that. So we're starting to knit together a very nice picture. Who'd like to build off of what Mendel and Barry?
I see somebody made a comment in the chat. If you look in the chat section, somebody put something.
Yeah, so sorry. I was not on, for some reason, my chat feature. Let me see if I can get it back. Okay, I just got it back, but it's not. Yeah, for some reason, I'm not able to get the chat to show up right now. So I'm going to have to rely on someone else to help me with the chat. So Rabbi Wordy, if you have access to the chat, if you've got a visual on the chat, if you could just share some of their comments, that'd be great.
Okay, 1 second, hold on, we're at chat. So there is here, somebody wrote, there's a fellow, his name is Michael Harari. He is a Boy Scouts leader, a US military chaplain, and a director in a camp that builds teens' leadership and personal responsibility. And this is a leader that he looks up to in terms of what you asked.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you so much. And other voices who would like to add to this? Sometimes I'm very tentative when it goes to the next item.
All right, so I'm calling on Shimon.
No,
Oh,
we don't have to call. No, let's not call just yet.
Okay.
Let's instead go to the limiting behaviors. This often gets people a little bit more aroused. When you think of behaviors that were disabling or got in your way or were not positive for the leader you're reflecting on, what were some of those behaviors? This list usually gets very interesting.
Yeah, I'll rub off what Barry said earlier about micromanaging and not giving room for people to use their own talents. Also, lack of transparency, double standards when the leader, the CEO, expects his workers to show up on time, to work hard, to this, that, and they themselves are not, following their own rules.
Yeah, that's very disruptive, isn't it? It also causes a lot of confusion. Let's build off of that. Who has another perspective on those limiting behaviors? Come on, you've experienced this so many times in your young lives. What are the behaviors that leaders show that get in your way? That they're terribly disabling.
Only focusing on your faults and not appreciating the positive attributes you bring to the table. Only fixing your errors, never complimenting you when you do something good.
Yeah, doesn't that really get you going? I mean, what would compel someone to do that? The reality is that happens much of the time. And this is what derails a lot of leaders. Can you imagine that happening at the very top of a large organization? How that makes people feel? Oh yeah, we have to keep it very balanced. How about one more idea, one more set of behaviors that are very limiting, things that just are very disruptive. I'll give you one. How about the leader that goes out of his or her way to make, Simon, you just raised your hand, so I'm just seeing it. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, if you can look at the chat.
No, I don't have visibility in the chat right now, so sorry.
I was going to say, if you can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, so I would say that not being direct in what is expected, leader wanting something to get done, but if they're not clear about it, then it makes everybody unhappy.
Yeah, so a lack of clarity is very limiting. It also causes incredible confusion. And many leaders think they're being clear, but they're not. And that's one of the reasons why feedback is so important. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Thank you for your examples. I just want to share a quick observation with the group. These are questions, these are reflections that may or may not trigger real experiences for you. So if you can't point to specific experiences you've had, go ahead and anticipate, just imagine what it would be like, or what are the kinds of behaviors you would need working for a leader, or what would your people, if you're in a management role today, how would others around you expect you to behave with them to get to be a good leader and to be very, very enabling. So let's press on. We've got a little bit more to go here before we get into our next practice. If you think about what leads to a very positive work climate, and you've probably been in some climates that were not very positive as a leader, and some that were incredibly engaging. These are some ideas that we can, now I'm seeing the chat, so I'm gonna leave it up there so I don't miss too much more of the chat along the side. The clarity and intent, communicating with gravitas, how you present yourself, how you show up, And if others see you really ready for that encounter, they're much more likely to be engaging. And there's another idea here. Do you take command of the situation? That's part of gravitas. Even young leaders bring a certain gravitas to the situation. It just answers the question, how do you show up? But this next area, that second bullet, the trust formula, is something you may never see again. And this is very revealing. And we really want to get your perspectives on this. If you're trying to figure out what it is that builds trust, this formula nails about 90% of it. So let me give you just an overview, and then we're going to dive into some of the nuances of the formula. Are you credible? Do you have the skills and capabilities you need to do what you're being asked to do? Are you reliable? When you say you're going to deliver something, do you do it? If you have a meeting and you say it's only going to be a 30 meeting and 2 hours later you're still wrestling with issues, they can't rely on you to lead short meetings. The intimacy piece is not what it seems, because this area of trust is nothing more than, are you gutsy enough to have tough conversations with people? When it gets very emotional, are you okay with that conversation? So if somebody comes to you in tears, male or female, it doesn't matter. They're going to come to you really upset about something at work, something happened. They just got some tough to hear feedback, whatever it is. Are you comfortable engaging them during that moment? But here's where it gets a little dicey. You can score a lot of points up above with all three of those, credibility, reliability, and intimacy, and not do well on the bottom. So what is self-orientation? Self-orientation is, and I'd like you to start thinking about your own roles. When I engage others, is it all about me, or is it all about them? Is my effort as a leader focusing on my success, how I want to be seen, or do people around me really believe that I'm in it for them? I value them. I want to clear the way so that they can do their very, very best work. I'm going to give them accurate feedback. That helps build trust. So if you're trying to build that level of trust and you want to do it sooner rather than later, just make sure that when you engage others, and this is what the research shows us as well, go out of your way to spend time with them. And the metrics are reflective of the whole organization and not just the leaders. This has to be about others and not just about the leader. So would someone like to push back on that? Because there is a bit of a twist with an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are notorious for it being all about them. In many cases, and this is why a lot of entrepreneurial organizations fail. They fail much of the time because in the entrepreneur moment, it's often all about them. And you know what? Sometimes investors like that. They want it to be all about the entrepreneur, and they're keen with that idea. So just know that this equation, and I'm going to give you an example in just a moment, but this equation is very relevant as you think about your own impact. Do you build trust with others? Do others trust you? And if you want to destroy trust, the two things that destroy it in wicked ways are you lose credibility and it becomes all about you. So just be mindful of that. And then we've got, oh, by the way, any questions on this? Can you still develop intimacy while working remotely? I would say absolutely, because one of the things many of you have already noticed, and Noah, I know we've talked about this, one of the things you've already noticed is with a remote work environment, the way that we stay in touch with people has actually become magnified. We're Zooming all the time, we're using Teams all the time, different platforms to connect with people. And although we can't be with each other physically, we're still able to have those productive encounters. We find ways to stay connected. So absolutely. You can have those tough conversations, as emotional as they may get or as difficult the feedback is. You can still have those conversations remotely. It's just different. And I hope we don't get too used to it, because nothing beats the face-to-face in person. So thanks for the question, Noah. All right, any other reactions so far? Feel free to challenge this formula. I've done it. Just feel free to challenge it. The next bullet is tough conversations, for the time when you have to tell somebody that they're not cutting it, or you're giving them some feedback that's not very flattering. It's emotional. You probably have a difference of opinion. So let me ask you, what are some examples? You can put this in chat, or you can come off mute. What are 2 or 3 examples of really difficult conversations as a leader? Who wants to toss a few out? Or maybe one at a time, just to see if we're all on the same page in terms of tough conversations.
If you have to fire someone?
Yeah, you have to, oh, that's always a joy. So that is a very tough conversation. Is that the final conversation, or was there a tough conversation leading up to it? Is this Yankee?
Yeah, I know. I guess if you don't like what someone's doing, there's a buildup. You have a conversation. Obviously, not going to, unless they're really bad, you can fire them on the spot. But you start like pointing out, hinting out that you don't like certain things that they're doing. You start getting the impression, the employee, that he wants to fire you.
Yeah, gosh, you're hinting that there were probably a series of tough conversations leading up to that. There's always high stakes. In some cases, it could bring the business down if you're not fulfilling orders, or if you make mistakes, you ship the wrong product to the wrong person, or you got some feedback from another worker and you thought it was about this person. You had that conversation and you were way off base because that wasn't the reality. So if you want to know if it's a tough conversation, it's typically emotional, and there's something at stake, and that makes it extra difficult. You'll have a lot of these. In some cases, I was just talking to the president of a U.S. company today. It's a global company, but he's president of the U.S. division, and he was telling me that he spends about 75% of his day, his working day, managing through difficult conversations, and he said, I never signed up for that. But how can I be expected to deliver the results for my company if I'm always involved in tough conversations? It keeps me up at night, and then I wake up tired, and I'm still expected to have these tough conversations with people. So the positive work climate is often shaped by a leader's willingness to have those difficult conversations. It takes a lot of fortitude and a lot of thinking. And some of you have been in situations where you had to have tough conversations with people. And if you're not equipped to have that conversation on your own, go get some guidance. And that's where the next bullet really matters. When you're thinking about how well you engage the people around you, or someday you will, or here's an example for some of you who you may or may not have spent time as camp counselors or head counselors or in internships, some type of short-term work situations. You discovered what it was like to engage others when the moments are difficult. And how do you get others to follow you when you want them to climb on board? Are they all in? No. Well, how do you get them to be all in? And engaging others is one of the biggest hurdles for any leader. The last bullet is one of our key themes for this evening. And you're already picking up on the fact that so much of this discussion is about reflection, getting ready for tough conversations. How willing and ready am I? What kind of impact am I going to have on my friend who I'm about to have a tough conversation with? Because many of you are probably in work environments where you're also friends with the people with whom you work. But self-awareness is huge, especially for entrepreneurship. Having a mentor or a coach is often a difference maker. And one of the things that I've discovered over the past few years working with a lot of young people starting organizations is they neglected to have a core team around them, both within the business and outside the business, that can provide very objective insight. How am I doing? Please tell me. I want to know. I want to know the details. I want to know if I'm coming across okay. Please give me feedback. And without that feedback, it's very, very difficult to have a positive impact and create a positive work climate as a leader. Any reactions to what you're seeing here on the slide? Is this helpful information so far? Or does it seem just beyond where you need to be right now in terms of your thinking? Because we're about to drill down to some very specific examples. Okay, I take that as a thumbs up. We're good to go. Okay, let's press on. Here's a very different situation. Some of you may have heard of this fellow, Hamdi Ilikaya. He started up in the mid-90s. He started a company called Chobani. Actually, he arrived in the US. He was a a Kurdish dairy farmer in the Kurdish area of Turkey. There was a war going on. The likelihood that you would live beyond the age of 30 was about 50% at the time. And he decided that was not a good thing. And he got some degree of education in Turkey, but decided to come to America, came to America in the mid to late 90s, got educated at Adelphi University and the University of Albany, part of the State University of New York, and he did very well. He leaves the university and decides to buy a small dairy farm from Kraft. He got it at on a fire sale. Couldn't believe he was able to buy it. He was able to get a small, actually a modest business loan on his own with no outside investors in 2005. So he kind of wrestled with where he was going to do this, where he was going to set up this yogurt business, because he was a dairy farmer. This is what he knew how to do. And he had graduated from a business program. He really understood business. He went through discussions much like the discussions you're going through right now with the Entrepreneur program. Why do I mention Hamdi Ulikaya? When he walks into one of his factories today, people can't help themselves but running up to him, giving him a hug. Yes, he allows it. They're crying because they're so grateful that he's there for giving them job. By the way, he flies people in from other countries to come to work for him. He pays their rent during the first 6 months, and he makes sure they have food on the table. So if you think that that builds loyalty, you're spot on. Something else about Hamdi Ulikaya. If you talk to other business leaders, they describe him as one of the shrewdest, most focused, most productive business executives they've ever seen. And you wonder, how does he balance concern for the business and concern for people? It's not surprising when you see his numbers. It's not surprising when you see the fact that he has grown his yogurt company to be the dominant yogurt company in the world today. He goes back and forth with Yoplait and Dan and a couple of the other companies, but he has demonstrated over and over again his ability to launch outstanding products. And some of the things that he does that separate him from the pack include the way he clarifies, the way he sets the tone for expectations. Everybody in Hamdi's organization knows what he expects, and he surrounds himself with awesome talent. And he does that at a level that's uncommon, and everybody in his organization knows what they're accountable for. Oh, here's something else interesting about Hamdi's organization. By the way, obviously, when he started out, he was an entrepreneur. He still considers himself an entrepreneur, even though he's running a multi-billion-dollar organization. And he's done all this in less than 20 years. He has this uncanny ability to stay laser focused. He has an uncommon level of grit. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to describe someone you know who has a lot of grit. They just have passion for what they do. They're totally committed, and they can't imagine letting go of something until they nail it. But grit is a very unique quality. Actually, Angela Duckworth has done a lot of research on grit, and she says it's a combination of passion and perseverance. So we're curious, who can share a couple of insights around a gritty person you know? What does that person do that signals that they are gritty? They're going to hunker down, get the job done as a leader or not, but it's something that they just have to do. They've got the ultra focus to make things happen. You don't have to tell us who it is, but what is it that person does that makes them so gritty? Uh-oh, crickets again.
I work with someone who has to some extent OCD, and when he's handling certain situations, I know to trust fully that it's going to be done thoroughly and well, because of his OCD.
And that is someone who takes the OCD behaviors and makes the most of it. This person is just obviously able to just stay laser focused. And Noah, what kind of a difference does that make?
Well, it's trusting that certain things get done. It's being able to work alongside this person and be more productive when working with this person.
Yeah. And you're just also reminding us that not everybody operates the same. Some people are gritty, some people are not. Some people are resilient, and some people are quite the opposite. So when you see the word resilience, Noah, feel free to pick somebody else in the group. When you think of the word resilience, what is it about resilience that is so important in the day in the life of a young leader / entrepreneur? Why would resilience be an important part of that formula for success?
I was just commenting, by the way, someone put something on the chat. If you look on the chat, there's
Okay, I'm still having a hard time getting it to come up. Sorry.
Somebody was pointing out that they admire Elon Musk for persistence.
And so he's persistent. Tell us more about who, let's see, that was Mendel. Mendel, Elon Musk is known for a lot of things, and not all of them are nice. So tell us more about Elon Musk's persistence. He is laser focused. He doesn't ask anybody to do something he wouldn't do himself. So tell us more about Elon Musk's reputation.
Well, from his very first company, which I think was PayPal, and throughout all his new adventures that he's been through, he hasn't made so much money, which is quite surprising. But what kept him going is he had a goal, he wanted to get it done, and he worked for it. He sold a lot of his, I think, all his houses because he had a goal and he was persistent to make that goal happen, whether or not he makes money. I mean,
whatever
a lot of people,
took, right? Whatever
like you say, entrepreneurs, it's hard because they'll fail, and they may not always try again and again. Then you take the easy route and go simple, go work. But someone like Elon he is constantly retrying, and he fails. He does fail, and things do mess up. But
like a rocket blowing up on the ground, right?
Yeah, right. It just happened. But he would never give up. He's just going to keep going until.
He's relentless. And Mendel, you're reminding us how important it is to bounce back. The essence of resilience is, do I have the willpower to bounce back, or do I let it drag me down? And one of the things that differentiate entrepreneurial leaders, because you can be an entrepreneur and be buried somewhere in the organization where you're not in a leadership role, but one of the points of difference for a very successful entrepreneur, since much of the day in the life of the entrepreneur is risk in so many shapes and sizes, is the ability to bounce back. And there is this point in time where the leader gets to where I'm either going to be resilient or this is going to get the best of me. And what's the flip side of resilience? It's burnout. And this is what a lot of entrepreneurs wrestle with. And I don't know if any of you who have been in these entrepreneurial positions have faced that resilience versus burnout, or you're teetering on burnout. Have any of you met someone who faced both, or maybe went one direction versus another, or did face burnout and they were unable to maintain that resilience? If you do, we'd love to hear a little bit about that. Not specific names or companies, but just what was it like as that person went through that? What's it like to face burnout?
The stock market.
Okay. I'm not seeing any comments in chat. I'm not seeing any hand raises. So let's just say that when you're given a choice between resilience and burnout, burnout gets the best of people more often. Resilience is something that has to be practiced. And one of the encouragements I'll leave with you this evening is, when you have great people around you, people you can turn to, a mentor to turn to, a coach to help you, resilience is much more likely. Don't ever feel you have to lead alone. It can seem very lonely, but it doesn't have to be lonely. So as you look at this list, and you can put this in chat, I now have chat up and running for some, now it's finally being friendly. As you think about this list, which of these items do you find most challenging? Or do you anticipate being most challenging? And just drop your ideas into chat. Everybody, we should see a lot of your reflections flowing here. Actually, go to chat, type it in, which of these are most challenging and why. Why would it be most challenging? Keep them short. And if you, let's let some of those chats appear, and then we'll ask for some of you to just share your perspectives. So which of these items is most challenging? Because when you nail these, you're incredibly productive as a team. So let's get some reflection. Okay, thanks Mordecai, Grit. Still waiting, they should be flowing here. Which of these is most challenging? Meaning you have to invest in it. Second bullet, surrounding with great talent. Yeah, you gotta find it, and then you gotta keep it, staying focused. Thanks Mordecai. So it's pretty spread out across this list. Just know, oh, thank you for the editorial.
I don't see the screen though. I don't see your screen that you're showing.
Oh, you're not seeing the screen?
No.
Is everybody not seeing the screen?
I see it.
Yeah, if you're seeing the screen, just give me a quick hand raise, or just thumbs up, because
I mean, I see all the participants.
Yeah, you should be seeing the screen. Sometimes if you go out and come back in, you'll be able to see it very nicely.
It's all the way on the left, the first page of the participants.
Oh, the screen itself? All right, so resilience. All right, so thank you for your input here. It's pretty spread out in terms of which one is the most challenging. So I have some ideas as we get a little bit further, and we don't have much more to go here. But as we're talking about boosting productivity, being the most productive leader you can be, getting your team to perform it at a higher level, every one of these boosts productivity. And what I hear sometimes is it's going to take me a while to surround myself with great talent. No, you probably can't wait. I'm not very good at clarifying expectations because I seem to change my expectations all the time, and it frustrates people around me. Just know that can bring a business under. If you change your expectations, that means you don't seem convicted, or you don't seem convinced. You don't seem compelled to follow those expectations and to reinforce those expectations. So it can create a lot of havoc in the organization. So we know that all of these are really important, and the habits that limit performance are even more important. And this is, I just want to go down one more slide and check on something. Yeah, so I'm going to fast forward here in just a moment. These are the things that get leaders in trouble. You don't understand where you're vulnerable. You think you have a strength and you don't. You may not be attentive to detail. So you just think of your own situations. Do I focus on details, or do I like the bigger picture? Do I need somebody else to focus on those details? If I'm not good at report management, report generation, do I need somebody else to do that? Do I pay my business taxes on time, or do I need an accountant to do that? But the one that really creates the biggest burden for any entrepreneur is poor listening, because many entrepreneurs think they know it all. It's my business, I'm in charge. And Marshall Goldsmith, a global coach who gave me my first 360-degree feedback, wrote a wonderful book called Triggers. If you want to grab it, it's a really good book. It's called Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith. He talks a lot about what got you here won't get you there. And as you step into different roles, whether it's a leader role or a very important individual contributor role, just know that when you listen to others, when you show that you care to listen, others really respect that. And the more you listen, the more you know, the better versed you are about situations, the more people are likely to get on board with your ideas. So just think about how you're going to take listening to a better place. Aside from the fact that most human beings cannot remember more than 10 or 15% of what they hear. So after this session is over, even though you've been listening to each other and listening to me a lot for the past 50 minutes, you will forget most of what you heard tonight. But statistically, 2 or 3 of you will remember a surprising 40 to 50% about what you heard. Why do you remember it? Because you let it resonate, you take it to heart, you begin to wonder, am I or am I not? And you've already started to make that commitment to self to take your leadership awareness to a better place. And there's one other item on this list that's very relevant, and it has to do with habits. Just a very quick note on habit. There are 3 key ingredients, and Charles Duhigg in his book, it's Duhigg. Charles Duhigg in his book, The Power of Habit, talks a lot about what differentiates outstanding performance. Spends a lot of time with business leaders and professional athletes, Olympic athletes. He broke the code on what it takes to change a habit. Many entrepreneurs disrupt their business because of their habits. I had a close friend here in Houston who was running a business, and he found himself outside smoking a cigarette about 30% of his day. He felt that was very productive time. He'd go outside, he'd have meetings with people. He's in a corporate setting, so he would do that, and his team would have to go outside with him and join him for 20 or 30 minutes while he smoked a cigarette, because he was the leader, and he viewed that as thinking time. So we had to come up with a different routine for him. If the cue is the urge to smoke and the reward is feeling less stressed, what other routine can you introduce so that he could break that habit? It was burning 30% of his day. He lost that much productivity, and he was also pulling his team members away at their most productive points during the day. And he had to change that habit. And it took us 6 months to figure out how he was going to do that. But it's possible. So just think about your own. Let me ask you, who can provide a quick example of a habit that you think young leaders fall into and they need to break the routine because it's not helping? Any habits come to mind? Anybody sleep late? Anybody eat crummy food for meals? No, nobody on this call. Anybody find themselves saying they want to exercise, but they don't? Just think about the routines that you're in that could make you more complete physically and mentally, and ask yourself, what routine would I have to adopt to make a difference? I know that I have over the past few months, I have some stress in a tendon in my right arm from a certain exercise that I've been doing, and it's really annoying. I had to take the last 3 months to teach myself to do many routine things with my left hand. I'm eating with my left hand, brushing my teeth with my left hand, and so many things had to change. And it's taken that level of discipline, and it's been very hard to change that routine because it's automatic. I've been doing it the same way since I was a kid, to change that routine. But now, 3 months into it, but I can do it with either hand, and it's very convenient, but it's saving my right arm right now. In some cases, you're going to change a habit because it'll make you a stronger leader. One of those habits is how you give feedback. Remember, we talked about tough conversations. If the cue, here's an example, this is a real case. If the cue is you see something happen that is not appropriate, your routine is to laugh it off. Your routine is to shy away from it. And you feel good about it. That's the reward, because you didn't disrupt the relationship with the close associate. And that's what happens with leaders. They get very comfortable. They don't step into situations when they need to. So here's a difference. The cue is you see something happen that's inappropriate. The routine is you convince yourself that more than 50% of the time, you're going to step into that situation and deal with it in the moment, as uncomfortable as that can be. The reward is people know you're paying attention. Because one of the things that disrupts leaders in terms of the rank and file is others see that the leader is not taking care of business, not taking care of performance, not stepping into situations that need to be handled immediately, not taking care of themselves, not being careful with language. There's so many things that leaders are not taking care of, and others often see it before the leader does. Any other reactions to habits that a leader might need to change, or why poor listening we know gets in the way? You get too amped. Have you ever known somebody that just gets too amped? They're constantly amped to the point where they just cannot regulate. It's painful. And it causes this sensation, and you've probably seen this. It causes a sensation we call the amygdala hijack, which is when we fly off the handle. Do you ever find yourself this is why I hate driving in New York, in traffic in New York, and somebody cuts you off? I know, every other minute probably, but somebody cuts you off in traffic. The amygdala hijack is what happens when we fly off the handle. You start yelling at the person in the other car. You start using hand gestures. You start patting the steering wheel. You say choice words to yourself that you probably never say in public. That is the amygdala hijack. It gets the best of you. And it happens in the brain faster than we can deal with it. It's similar to I don't know if you've ever had a close call in traffic, hopefully not, where you almost have an accident, you slam on the brakes, you have a near miss, you can almost taste it in your mouth. That's our cortisol spiking. And when that happens, when we experience this hijack, it's just like an executive who takes a piece of paper because they're unhappy with the number and they wad it up and throw it across the table and nail one of their executives in the head, which has happened. That's an amygdala hijack. I encourage you to rise above that, to catch it early. The more self-aware you are, the better equipped you are to keep this under control. So here we're going to take a very quick emotional intelligence quiz. So if you have your phones available, I'd like to, hopefully you can see the web, that URL. Sorry, you can't just click on it. Just go ahead and copy. It's a very short URL. Copy that. Make sure you have those are dashes, not dots, between free, EQ, and quiz. The whole thing from start to finish, from the time you bring it up, takes about 2 minutes. You'll get a report back, and we'd like to get some quick results. So go ahead, grab that quiz, take the quiz, and let's see your results. I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to do that. And you'll all be sharing your results quickly here in just a few minutes. If you have trouble doing this or you're unable to do it, just let me know. Sorry, I can't do it for you, but it's very easy on the mind, easy on the heart. And again, if you're not able to do this because you're going to be sharing some results here in just a few minutes in chat, please let me know.
It's the emotional intelligence test?
Yes. It comes up. It's only a series of 8 to 10 questions, and it will give you a very quick summary. I'm just going to go quiet here for a minute. And if you're finished, just go ahead and either give a hand raise or a thumbs up that you're finished. It goes really quick.
I'm finished here, Robbie. What are you sharing?
All right.
The results are in.
Your results are in. Survey says. Don't tell us. Keep us in suspense.
Oh, you want me to say it? I says that I have a good EQ.
All right. All right. Thank you for those results. Okay, hand raised or thumbs up, please, on your camera. That'd be great. Thanks, Evie. Debbie, you okay with your results?
Good EQ.
Good EQ? Okay. Keep going. Most of you should be finished by now.
But it doesn't give you an analysis. It just gives you a good or bad. That's how it goes.
It just gives you a heads up. And the learning moment here has less to do with the outcome of the quiz and more to do with the questions that are being asked.
I see a lot of people putting in the chat now.
I have good EQ.
All right, so we're getting some good EQ. So there's some good news and some bad news. The good news is that if you were thinking about real situations as you answered these questions, you're probably around 50% accurate. Because if you want to know exactly how much emotional intelligence you have, and this is one of the top 3 points of difference for entrepreneurs, the emotionally intelligent entrepreneur is about 50% more likely to be successful. If just know that others are typically better equipped to assess your emotional intelligence than you are. And if you really want to know, have somebody else fill out this quiz for you, people that watch you in action, because that's the better indication of what your emotional intelligence is. So let's get some quick insights. Which of those questions seems most interesting to you? Just pick one of them. You don't have to go back. You remember some of the questions. You just took the quiz. what were some, what one question stands out for you?
If criticism moves you to grow and change.
Okay. And as you reflect on that, does that make sense in terms of the importance of that as a leader?
Absolutely.
Some leaders encourage the feedback, the criticism. Some don't. Strong, able, willing leaders encourage feedback. They want to know from others, how am I doing? And they're okay with what they hear. Anyone else? Which question stood out for you?
Well, I would just say what I says here. I manage anxiety, stress, anger, and fear in pursuit of a goal. Is that trying to say that that's the only time that you're able to manage it? Like what would I
No, it just means you're connected. It just means you're connected to all those emotions and you're able to
So is that a
have
good
help
thing
them
or a
work
bad
for
thing?
you. You want to be able to harness it. You want to be able to wrap your head around all those emotions in pursuit of a goal. It just reminds us that given all the challenges of entrepreneurship, that we have a lot to undertake. And some of you who are in business for yourself or you're working close with the ownership team, you know how challenging it is to maintain that level-headedness as a leader. It is so easy sometimes to lose it. And as entrepreneurs, I see it happening all the time. So what other questions got you going? Because this amygdala hijack is a big deal, especially for early career entrepreneurs. If you nail this, if you think a lot about it and you respond to it, manage it carefully, before it gets the best of you, others see that and they really appreciate it. Any other reflections on the quiz? I would encourage you to just take that insight as one note to self. This is how I scored. I'd like to find out from some others who know me well, and some of you on this call probably know each other very well. How would you score me on this? Because our ability to reflect accurately is rather limiting. And it's really useful when you get others to be more involved in this assessment. So I thought it would be helpful for you to see that and to react to it, because when you really think about your role as leaders and evolving as a leader, the combination of self-awareness and regulation is really important. Can I maintain control? When the heat's turned up, do others see me in control? Or do I lose it a little bit? And as well, do I show my ability, my care and concern for acknowledging emotions with other people? So just be thinking about these things, regulate as often as possible, be self-aware, and just know that when you take your emotional intelligence to a better place, your whole business benefits from it. You're a better contributor. You're a stronger leader. People who lack emotional intelligence often derail. And when you derail as a leader, often you take the whole business with you. So any other reactions to this idea of self-regulation? I have to be able to regulate. I have to involve other people in how I'm doing, and I have to be more self-aware. Do you feel you're able to do that, or is this going to take a bit longer? Or does it not matter at this point where you are in life?
Well, look, by the way, I just wanna, from listening to this and ultimately to some degree, I'm a leader. I run an organization and I employ 6 people. So there's, a lot of what you're discussing is very actionable for me. I'm just curious. This is sort of like a little bit out of the scope of this discussion, which has been very basic and not necessarily meant to be, so practical. How does like for myself, obviously you want your team to I'm fumbling around here. How do you make sure your team? I mean, you as a leader think that I think that my staff appreciate and they have a vision of what we're doing. But if you want to take feedback from your honest feedback from your staff in order to get their perspective, how do you do that?
It's a wonderful question, and it's got a very simple answer, but it's incredibly difficult to execute. There are 3 parts to this discussion. Part 1, clarify with your team what's at stake. Number 2, ask them, what am I doing that is helping us, helping each of you be successful here, helping the organization? And what am I doing that's getting in the way? And when you have a very candid conversation like that, what am I doing that's helping you? You could do this one-on-one, or you can do it as a group. And what am I doing that's limiting, or what am I doing that's getting in the way? And that discussion can be a game changer. But it can only be a game changer if, as a leader, you acknowledge your willingness to listen and do things differently.
Let me ask you like this: do you recommend that regardless? I mean, like every leader of an organization does that with their staff once a year, or only like if you sense? I don't necessarily sense that anything is wrong. It's just from our from this whole discussion that you're having tonight. You've been making me think a lot about, I suppose, like my leadership and how it's perceived. So do you do this when you think something's wrong, or you just do it routinely?
No. Then it's too late. Yeah, you always stay in front of the curve. You always want to ask yourself, what should I be doing as a leader to enable the people around me to do their very best work? And this is a conversation. It doesn't happen every week. It can happen one-on-one, and it can happen as a team. As a team, maybe once every few months. Okay, we've tried some things differently. I've listened to your feedback. I'm trying to change some of my approaches. How am I doing? What's working? What's not working? And when they know that the questions are meaningful to you and that it's going to spill over onto the rest of the team, they'll participate. They'll be very open to the input, but you also have to demonstrate your willingness to act on what they're suggesting.
Okay.
Because usually their input is very, very much on target.
Right.
So really helpful question. Thanks. Thanks for bringing that up.
Well, it's just practical.
Yeah, it's very practical. I have another suggestion as we go to we're getting very close to the end here. Don't clap too much if we're getting close to the end. But the idea of what are your individual priorities for personal development? What's likely to get in my way? So I'd like you to take just a moment before, I'm just going to do a time check and see if I have an opportunity to demonstrate something for the group, to demonstrate what it's like to give very specific targeted feedback to someone and do it in a way, it's a process that is fail-safe. Others will really love you for it. It is a 3-step process, and you will always be able to use it across a variety of situations, and I can pretty much guarantee it will be favorable. So if I'd like you to start thinking about the priorities for your own development as a leader, what's likely to get in your way, often the excuse we have, and I'd like you to start thinking about these right now, what's likely to get in your way. And I'm just asking you to pick 1 or 2 priorities for your development. It could be from the first 5 sessions you've participated in this entrepreneurial program. This is but 1 of 5. So based on everything you've learned to this point, specifically around your own development, what are your top 1 or 2 priorities? So I'd like you to go ahead and put that into chat and definitely make a note to self. You can save the chat. I'm sure you all know how to save the chats from this session, but go ahead and do that. Start identifying the priorities for your development and at least 1 thing that's likely to get in the way. And you can't say life, okay? Life gets in my way. That's why I haven't been able to develop personally. So I'll give you just a moment to do that. And it's only going to be 30 seconds. Not even a moment, a half a moment. Because we're going to report out. Everybody's going to report out in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to turn it up here. Let's go ahead and start reporting out. We should have 18 ideas. And I'm seeing some of the ideas in chat. Let's go ahead and just come off mic. Let's make sure we hear from everybody rapid fire. Who'd like to go first? Not everybody at once.
All right,
Okay,
someone
let's do
just
it.
posted in the chat. Go ahead.
Okay, we could do it based on height. So who'd like to go first?
What was the question?
Oh, that's right. We didn't practice listening. So your priority for personal development and something that's likely to get in the way.
People are posting in the Mordecai. People are posting in the chat now.
Okay, so I'll go in there. I'll bring it up. See if it comes up. for the life of me, I cannot keep the
Yeah,
chat.
so I'll read to you.
Okay.
Anyway, so somebody wrote, ask the right questions, keep checking myself to make sure I'm on top of myself. Somebody else wrote less procrastination and more perseverance. Somebody just wrote feedback to and from employees and colleagues, streamlining systems so I can both maintain and grow the company. Emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, these are all important. And while you're reflecting on these, just also ask yourselves, what is destined to get in my way? Because if you're identifying that as a top priority for your development at this point in time, a lot of things are going to create noise in your world. That already happened. So just ask yourself, how do I commit to this and make it happen? Because if I do commit to it, if I involve others in my personal development needs and remedies, then I'm much more likely to be a more effective leader and a more effective colleague. And every one of you is in a slightly different place in terms of your experience as a business leader. And just know that, okay, we got another comment.
Yeah, someone just posted better communication. I wanted to make a comment myself to everybody that's listening from this. This was a class on leadership, and there's the one thing that I don't know if everyone's been paying attention. There's one thing during this whole presentation, there was something here that was missing deliberately. In other words, and this is my commentary, Mordechai, you can tell me if I'm off on this or not. Generally, when you like to think of leaders, most of us like to think of like somebody loud and somebody, the someone that's up there in front of the crowd screaming, men, we must do, generally when you think of a leader, you're thinking of, I'm fumbling for the exact right word to use, but we think more of like very visible people that do
dynamic,
yeah. Motivational people. And if you went through this whole, if you were paying attention in your definition of leadership and all the things that you've been describing tonight, there was none of that. This was really more about creating goals and
clarity.
vision,
yep.
and then just being there for your team to make sure that they work towards it's a much more. So your definition of leadership is different than what most of us seem to think. Is that correct?
I don't know. Let's hear from others. But all I know is that the data and the research suggests that the things we talked about tonight differentiate leaders, particularly those who are entrepreneurs. And one of the reasons is that one of the key variables in entrepreneurship is the assumption of risk. You cannot be an entrepreneur and not take on risk, personal risk, business risk, family risk. There are not many people in the world, or a very small percentage of people throughout the world, who are comfortable taking on that personal risk, who are confident and compelling enough to take on that risk. What you've seen this evening, what we've talked about, may not necessarily seem in line with these dynamic leaders that you're familiar with, or that world-class leader that everybody loves to talk about. Example, Elon Musk. Elon Musk is not a dynamic leader. Stephen Jobs was not a dynamic leader. Hamdi Ulikaya is not a dynamic leader. But each one of those entrepreneurs started out modestly, assumed tremendous personal risk. Michael Dell starts out in his garage, had no money. His mother and grandmother had to give him everything he needed early on to operate out of his garage. And over and over again, even today, he always talks about the risks that he took on as a young person and assumed that, didn't want anybody else to be burdened by it. He wanted to carry that risk. So much of what we've chatted about this evening, you might be hearing for the first time. Much of it has to do with your short-term success, your long-term success, but everything that you've seen tonight is a variable in leadership success. We've included absolutely nothing. I was very careful about that. No ingredients tonight that are irrelevant or just don't matter for the entrepreneur leader. And it can be overwhelming as you look at this massive capacity. It could just be overwhelming when you think of it all at once.
If I could, I just add, maybe I want to say what I said before in different words, and you'll tell me if you agree or disagree. Maybe a lot of you that came into this class tonight, maybe look, a lot of us don't necessarily think of ourselves as leaders. There's certain people that we grew up with that they were the leaders, so to say. And again, I don't know every one of you particularly, but generally speaking, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm a leader. I just want to get the job done. And if you follow what Mordechai was saying over here, the bottom line is that it's not necessarily those loud people that are leaders. It's when you take on a responsibility, you take ownership of it, and you have to work with other people, and you just you put in the work that needs to get done following the principles that he listed here. Many people would be surprised that they end up being the leader in the ways that they never believed that they could be.
Absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And if you're curious about which leader attribute rises above all the others, and there's only one. It doesn't have to do with business insight. It doesn't have to do with money. It doesn't have to do with financials. It's clarity. Business leaders who clarify for themselves and everybody else around them, why are we doing what we're doing? Why is it so important? What do others expect of us? What do our investors expect? What do we expect of each other? What do we expect of you when you step into this job? How are we going to build accountability? When, as a leader, you focus on clarity of purpose, clarity of intent, clarity of what we're chasing. What are we trying to create here? And you use a collective we, you not only score points with your team, but others are able to do their very best work. And I see that over and over again in the coaching that I do. And that's usually the area of coaching. It's either clarity or feedback that very senior leaders are struggling with. I wanted to leave you with an example, a very quick example. Just want to give you something to take and run with, something you can apply immediately. It's a feedback model, because many leaders, early career, are not very good at giving feedback, and they're not very good at accepting it. So I just want to, without making any assumptions about this group, I'm going to assume that you would really benefit from a very quick, easy to use tool. It has 3 steps, and I'm going to demonstrate it with Rabbi Wordy here in just a moment. 3 steps. B-I-C. B-I-C. What's the
There's
behavior?
supposed to be a slide showing.
No,
on this?
there's no slide. I'm adding
No
this
slide.
in based on the conversation.
Okay. Okay.
What's the behavior I observed? What's the impact of that behavior? And what's the consequence? Behavior, impact, consequence, BIC. And I'm about to demonstrate this with Rabbi Wordy. I'm going to give you some encouraging feedback, and this is real. So Rabbi Wordy, one of the things that I've observed about you over the past several weeks is your willingness to stay very connected to me as a speaker. And you made it very clear to me how important these sessions were to you and the young people who are participating. The way that you kept in touch with me, as responsive as you were, the urgency that you showed me, I fed off of that. And the impact on me was you kind of raised my interest. You piqued my energy. You kind of drew me into the situation. And I just wanted you to know that it had a lot of impact on me. On the consequence of what you did and how you did it with me is that I was able to quickly pull together this experience and hopefully create more of a foundation for these young leaders to not only assess their own readiness, but to build on the things they already do well, and to walk away from this session feeling inspired, encouraged, and enabled to do things differently going forward. Okay, so that was 1 minute of feedback.
So as a reflection back, so first of all, thank you for sharing that. And look, I mean, all of the people on here tonight are people that are investing in themselves because they want to get somewhere, and so this was that they're feeding me and my drive to create content for them that's going to empower them. So thank you for this beautiful presentation.
My pleasure. I do have one final question for everybody. As you think about this session, I'd like you just one word, and if you would come off of mute one at a time, if that's possible, just give a second or two between, or please come off mute because we want to hear your voice in the end here. One key takeaway, one or two words that just kind of summarize a key takeaway for you this evening.
So let's go. Let's just
Feedback.
one at a time. So who's that? Who's
The feedback,
yeah?
the importance of feedback.
Oh, the importance of feedback. Okay.
What else? Keep going.
Focus.
We have 17 more. Focus.
Focus.
And do you have a sense for what that means for you? Hopefully the answer is yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer is yeah. The answer is not to think in the small picture. I mean, as a working person, it's hard to leave the work and focus on my future, because you get tied down to day-to-day things. But I have to take a step back every day and like think, where am I holding different than yesterday in my own career?
Mendel, it's actually a best practice. 5 minutes at the end of each day. And when you just protect 5 minutes for personal reflection, you do no other work. All you're doing is reflecting on some of the things that we talked about tonight. It's well worth the 5 minutes. That's all your time. Okay, who's up next?
Thanks.
Mendel, who do you want to hear from
Thanks,
next? Who do you want to hear from next?
Having a vision, expressing that vision, and you said realizing the impact it has. So once you have the vision and you express your vision in a way that the people can actually take your vision and make something of it, and then you'll actually get to your goal that you're trying to get to. One other thing
that's very helpful, Menachem. Thanks. Keep going.
One other thing you said, stop a problem from the beginning. If you're clear about what you want from the beginning, the people that you're working with know what the goal is, and as soon as a problem arises, take it head on and get rid of a problem from the beginning, obviously in a proper fashion. By doing that, you'll actually have a proper situation going on.
Absolutely. Menachem, you're just reminding everybody, step into a situation early, because the longer you wait, the worse it gets. And most of these situations don't fix themselves. Menachem, who would you like to hear from next? Who haven't we heard from?
Amygdala.
All right, we're waiting. Who's up next?
Zevi's siblings.
Key takeaway, Zevi. Is Zevi still with us? Don't forget if you're talking, come off mute. This is Yankee?
This is Yankee. No, it's very productive, because every time you learn something new, it gives you the skills and the knowledge to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So being a lead, your class was very was some good tips for being a leader.
Tips and tricks, but it's got to resonate. You just got to personalize it, and it will really work for you. Thanks, Yankee. Okay, who's up next? Just several more to go. Let's do this rapid fire.
Let's go, Levi Mangel. What do you say? What did you learn from tonight?
Said earlier, feedback that's definitely you have to give and also take, like, both ways in order for things to get done, for you to be understood and for you to understand how things were, like, to fix things or make sure everything's running smoothly.
Yeah, Levi, it's a two-way street, isn't it? Yeah, and sometimes we have to be brave when we give and receive feedback. Yeah, and they'll really benefit from it, and you'll benefit from it. The more you do it, the more we grow. All right, a couple more.
David Elias, what did you learn from tonight?
Yeah, to be a good listener, and like also want to be able to listen and want to accept the feedback that and be able to handle it. And
All right, thank you. Who's up next? Just a couple more, and
Abba Volasov.
I don't want to make this too painful. This should just be rolling off your tongues.
I like that trust formula that you provided.
Oh, the trust, isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so personalize it, make it work for you. It also leads to really important conversations at work, because if you're working as a team to boost trust, which makes everybody more comfortable with each other, and you have this conversation, it's what are we doing that ruins reliability? What's affecting our credibility as a team? Am I doing everything I need to do as a leader to help you? Or is it too much of it revolves around me? Just have that conversation and you'll get great insights from the people around you. Okay, a few more comments.
Yeah, oh, sorry, someone just asked in the chat if we could share the PowerPoint to the presentation.
Yeah, I'll forward it to you.
Just one last little thing we did speak about a little bit, but how do you keep people motivated? I guess through leadership.
If we had another hour, we could chat deeply about that. A little tip, a tip and trick for how do you motivate other people? There's actually, I'd like to answer it with two simple comments. One, motivate yourself first, because the best motivation for others starts with you. If you are motivated and fully engaged, other people will catch the fever. Second, you motivate others through a positive work climate. The more they know you're focusing on a positive work climate, their natural motivation will show. Okay. And so much of what we talked about tonight was creating a positive work climate. That enables others' motivation to show up. They feel so much better about doing the work. They'll work so hard for each other. And another great sign that you have a positive work climate is, do people have one another's backs? And that is actually one of the best signs of a well-run team, if they can operate well when the leader is not there, and if they have one another's backs whenever it's necessary. Those are two key factors with an outstanding team.
Somebody just posted on the chat who, I guess I can't say it verbally. Can you please share with us who are some of the most motivational speakers you know of, and what are your thoughts of Simon Sinek?
Simon's great. He's very, very engaging, and he writes really well. But it depends who you want to listen to. There are some wonderful speakers out there on YouTube. Simon's really good. Chip, Dan Heath or Chip Heath, they wrote a number of books on leadership effectiveness. Their TED Talks are good. Their books are really good. Angela Duckworth's book on the power of Charles Duhigg's book, The Power of Habit. He also speaks a lot about the power of habit. What I'll do is I'll commit to putting these names out there. If you'll keep me on the WhatsApp group for a couple days, I'll go ahead and post some of the best speakers I know of. Marshall Goldsmith is an outstanding leadership speaker. He's been doing this for a while. He's one of my early coaches in life. He changed my life, actually, when he gave me my first 360-degree feedback. And he just has a wonderful message, not only about triggers, but about what it is you have to change about yourself in order to be more effective. So much of what he talks about deals with our personal lives, because that spills over into our work life and then back again. So check out Marshall Goldsmith as a champion for effective leadership. He's also very charismatic. Simon is really good at what he does. There are a few others out there. Remember, there are some folks who are just very dynamic, very engaging speakers, but don't necessarily help you lead better. They're just really good speakers. That's not the kind of person you want to listen to. You want to listen to somebody who can really give you nuggets that you can take and run with, that are very compelling, can help you operationalize some of the things we talked about tonight.
That's a quick question.
Yes.
From a personal experience in the past, let's say you have a boss that he's not the greatest leader, because he's something how he treats employees and things, but you actually like the work, but you can't tell your boss how to act. So what's your tips? If someone else has a similar situation that they enjoy where they're working, but how their boss leads and how they expect their expectations.
It's a very powerful question, and I can answer it simply with an illustration. And the illustration helps. It's an example of easing yourself into that situation. And it's unfortunately a conversation that you have to initiate. Never make it anonymous. This is you, for example, approaching your boss. I'm using Yankee, I'm using you as an example. You approach your boss. I'm not assuming this is your situation, because you could be representing somebody else's situation. So I'll assume it could be any one of those. You approach your supervisor with the following. I'd like to have a brief conversation about some recent observations. These are the things that are working for me. These are some of the things that I'm finding a little bit limiting. And I want to be able to make my best contributions wherever I can. There's some things that I would encourage you to do differently that would enable me to be even more productive, that would clear the path for me. And there are also some things that you're doing now that are very enabling, and I want to highlight some of those too. Can we talk about that? Because it's really important to me. Now, some people never have that conversation their whole life with their boss. I just had a conversation today with the president of this US company, and it was a conversation much like that. I had to tell him that I'm a new member of his team because I contract with several large teams around the world. And I had to tell him that, because he didn't ask me if I had some feedback for him. And I said, I just want you to know, Ben, I was a little frustrated this week. You know that I'm just chomping at the bit to deliver on behalf of the team and with the team because I'm on point for a large team. And I said, my frustration was I needed more communication from you to be more certain about what I was doing with the team. And I wasn't getting it. And I didn't know what to do about it because I don't know you that well yet. And you told me in the beginning that you wanted me to be very open about our communication. So I called him on it, and it took our relationship to a different place. I mean, it was like he turned into a different person at that moment because I didn't know this, but he thrives on feedback. He just doesn't know how to ask for it. So have that brave conversation, and never think that it's the last conversation you'll have with the boss, because that's rarely the case. Have your narrative ready, bounce it off of someone else who you trust, and have that conversation when it's the right time, the right location for the right reason. But always think through how your boss is likely to respond. When you think about how your boss is going to respond, you can adjust the narrative so that it's more palatable.
And just to stick in for everybody, if you listen to what Mordechai said, you notice how he balanced what he said. In other words, if you want to speak to somebody about something negative, always bring in positive together with it. So never just say, "Oh, there's some problems. I want to talk to you." Thank you for that's an important part over there. Not just not just bring up the negative. Always talk about highlight the positive, and this way you'll open them up so that they'll be open to hearing the negative.
But yet, Rabbi Werdy, the only time that does not apply is when you're giving somebody tough to hear feedback. Whenever because I gave you some positive feedback a short time back, right? It was very reinforcing. I could have approached it very differently. And if I had developmental feedback for you, something that you were not ready to hear, but I had an observation that was very relevant and something that I'm encouraging you to do differently going forward, I would not have sugarcoated it at all. And it's very tempting to what we call give somebody a feedback sandwich. What's going well? Where did you bomb? But you're doing things well here. Try to avoid that. It is very confusing. And to avoid the feedback sandwich is really important. But primarily when you're giving somebody tough to hear feedback, don't sugarcoat it because they will be utterly confused. It's like, because after all, they're not going to pay attention to the good stuff anyway. They're only going to pay attention to the things that you're telling them that make them feel vulnerable. So you're right, Rabbi Werdy, you can ease your way into the conversation by just letting them know you're a valuable member of this team, really appreciate your contributions, and stop there. And then there's no if, there's no but, yet, or however. Eliminate those words from your vocabulary. And I mean that. When you're having a feedback conversation with somebody, don't use the word but, yet, or however. Just completely erase that. So when you chat with somebody, we really value your participation here. You're definitely helping us move things along. I do have a couple of observations, though, I'd like to share with you. And it's important that I share them with you now while you're still early in your work here, because of this, and this, and the consequences of not adjusting for this now could alienate you further from the rest of your team. So have that conversation, but you don't use the word but, yet, or however, because it negates everything you said before. So be very careful with your words. Always, Yankee, I'm just encouraging you to use your narratives carefully. And any of you who are still listening, just be very mindful of the words you choose, the place you deliver them, and how you're reacting to what you're hearing in return. And that's really hard to get your arms around.
Okay. So for everyone that was listening, If you notice that Mordechai squeezed in his few short words over there, all of the other areas of expertise that he's involved in.
Yeah, but I know we've probably extended our time and everybody has another life as we approach 10 o'clock Eastern. I just want to say, I didn't know what to expect. I know we didn't have a lot of interaction on this call, and I earn my livelihood having sessions like this, Zooms galore, Teams meetings, WebEx meetings, a lot of interaction. And I would just encourage you as you continue with the rest of your sessions under this program to find ways to let your voice be louder and more relevant. Let others hear what's on your mind, because I know that in this session, you may be reluctant to share, you might be reluctant to jump in because of the nature of the conversation. I'm encouraging you, as you think about your leadership voice, to share it more often. You have some wonderful perspectives. Share those perspectives, let your voice be heard, step into conversations, because that in and of itself helps you grow as a leader.
Okay.
So I hope this was helpful. Rabbi Wordy, do you want me to drop off and have everybody else stay on, or would you like to end the Zoom?
No, so that's it. We're done. We're done. No one is staying on. I hope everybody enjoyed. Have a wonderful week. I'm gonna post the recording of today's class on the chat. Mordechai is going to be posting some recommendations, follow-up recommendations in terms of reading material. Next week's class is back. We're back to Tuesday. It's an in-person class. It's a great class. We're having Aaron Pinson. Aaron is, some of you might recognize him if you read the Ami magazine. They have a section called the Biz Tank, where they sort of like, instead of like Shark Tank, the television
he writes
show.
Great pieces. Yeah,
right. So nice. No. So Aaron's not he's one of. They usually have like they have this investor series where they have like a bunch of investors and they serialize people getting up and pitching to them. He's been one of the sharks on the tank. He's nice. He's an active investor that invests in businesses. And so we had a few weeks ago an entrepreneur presenting how they present themselves to get investment. Next week we're going to hear the investor, what they look at for in order to be ready to invest in a business. That's going to be next week's class. I'll post. We have 5. We're right in the middle now. We have 5 weeks to go. I'll post all the next 5 classes on the chat. Next week's class is an in-person class at CHYE. So looking forward. Have a wonderful week. Mordechai, thank you so much for taking up your valuable time. And
my pleasure.
Yes, everybody.
All right, there's a standing offer.
Thank you very much.
Anybody on this, my pleasure, guys. Really great being with you. And I know we didn't hear from everybody, so sorry we couldn't get to know each other better. But it's a standing invitation. If I can ever assist somehow and you need maybe 10 or 15 minutes of my time during the day, just let me know. I'm happy to assist.
Thank you very much, and wishing you continued hatzlacha, nachas from the children, and we'll take care of Noah for you.
I bask in that nachas every day. Yeah, thank you. He I have a feeling he's kind of taking care of himself these days, though. All right, thanks everybody. Great being with you tonight.
All the best. Have a good night, everyone.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks.
Take care.